and gentlemen, welcome to my new video. My name's AJ, here to talk about an interesting topic today. I'm going to be talking about Bangladesh. Recently, the US has placed sanctions on Bangladesh, and it's also excluded Bangladesh from its Democracy Summit. And even though Bangladesh has been a very staunch ally of the United States in its war on terror, and it's also a democracy, so a lot of people in Bangladesh are not very happy, very miffed that they've been excluded from the Democracy Summit, and then the US has recently placed sanctions on them as well. So people in Bangladesh are not very happy, and this could push Bangladesh into China's hands. So let's look at some of these headlines that have been hitting the news the last few days. So, will US actions bring Dhaka and Beijing closer? Are sanctions on RAB a shift in US policy towards Bangladesh? Bangladesh Foreign Minister Momen criticizes US for imposing sanctions on elite cops. What's behind US sanctions against Bangladesh elite parliamentary force? So you can see Bangladeshis are not very happy. So before I talk about the topic, I want to give a brief history of Bangladesh, where they've been, what they've gone through, and where they are today. And I found this article by Ishrat Hussain, published 16th of December 2021. I'll send you the link. And I found it really interesting. Bangladesh is celebrating 50th anniversary, once called a basket case by Henry Kissinger. It is now considered a role model. Bangladesh's national income has multiplied 50 times. 50 times. So, seems like they're growing just as much as China did, actually. Per capita income 25 times higher than India's and Pakistan's, and food production 4 times. Population growth was contained at 2.5 times, raising per capita food availability. Exports have grown 100 times, and poverty is down 20% from 60% in 1990. Life expectancy has risen to 72. Most social indicators are better compared to regional countries except Sri Lanka. The value of Human Development Index increased 60%. There's more. Most of the progress has been achieved in the last 3 decades, same as China really. And as the first to experience growth and political turmoil, to put the progress into perspective, Pakistan per capita income in 1990 was twice as much as Bangladesh, but it has fallen today to only 7/10. Between 2011 and 2019, before COVID struck, Bangladesh's average GDP growth ranged between 7% and 8%, almost twice as fast as Pakistan. So here's some figures to prove it as well. So if you do Bangladesh GDP on Google, it says it's 302.6 billion USD in 2019, but I think it's in 2021 it's 329 billion. Compare that to Pakistan in 2021, 296, Myanmar only 78, Nepal 36 billion, Bhutan is only 2 billion, Sri Lanka is only 84 billion. So out of all of these countries, you can see Bangladesh is hugely improving in its GDP. And in terms of GDP per capita, you can see how Bangladesh has improved. You can see the red line. Year 1990, it was way below Pakistan. Pakistan is in the blue. And you can see 1990, it started growing. And recently, it's overtaken Pakistan in terms of PPP, and this is the Pakistani line, and you can see Bangladesh is overcoming, and is very close to reaching India's level, which is amazing for a country so small, and which has so many natural disasters. They've had loads of famines. Millions of people have died through floods and cyclones over the years. This article explains all of the issues Bangladesh have had with floods and famine and climate change disasters. They've had huge amounts of floods and cyclones over the years, which killed millions of Bangladeshis. There was about 25-30 million Bangladeshis who were made homeless. Many had died due to famine and lack of access to medicine. Also diseases through cholera, malaria, mosquitoes. Up to like 25-30 million had died over the past 50 years. So it's been a great tragedy, but it's also a miracle how Bangladesh has improved its GDP, and now making more money than Pakistan in terms of GDP, and in terms of PPP is getting higher than Pakistan. So it's absolute miracle how Bangladesh has achieved this over the past 20-30 years, and it's a very much a success story similar to what China had experienced. And I think with Bangladesh going through so many natural disasters, wars, it's actually strengthened the resolve of Bengali people, and I think Bengali people do have this very good mental strength. And even people in UK, I was brought up in East London, so there's a very huge Bengali population around my area when I was growing up, and a lot of my friends were Bengali as well. And I can see they're very strong-minded people. A lot of people don't realise this, but a lot of Indian restaurants in England, 99% of Indian restaurants are actually owned by Bengalis. So they're not really Indian restaurants, they're not actually Bengali food. So a lot of white people think they're having Indian, but it's actually Bengali food they're having. So a lot of people didn't know that. So that's like a very cool fact. One of the main areas is East London, is Brick Lane. There's a huge Bengali population living there. But Bengali people are very savvy, business-minded. A lot of them don't know how to make money. They work hard, and that comes through because of all the issues they've had in the past with Bangladesh, with the wars and with the famines. It has kind of toughened a lot of these Bengalis up, and a lot of them do know how to make money, and a lot of them do send a lot of money to Bangladesh as well. A lot of the rich Bangladeshis living in UK, they do send a lot of money in Bangladesh, and some of them even go back to Bangladesh and start up businesses and stuff like that. There's a lot of rich Bengalis living in East London, a lot of very savvy business owners, restaurant owners, and other things. But they do work hard. They work very hard. They want to be successful, and at one point Bengalis were known as the lowest form of Asians. Pakistanis used to look down on them, Indians used to look down on them. They were kind of the lowest of the low. They used to call them the poor man of Asia, the real poor man of Asia. So they've worked very hard to get that poor man of Asia stigma out, and they've kind of proved that they are hardworking, they are successful. They're not just someone just there just to kind of get beat on. So my respects to them really for kind of becoming very successful, even though in such a short amount of time. So a brief history of how Bangladesh was created. It was part of East Pakistan. So you have Pakistan on the west side of India called West Pakistan, and the east side of India was East Pakistan. And the problem with Bangladesh was it was very, very poor, impoverished, and the West Pakistan side was very rich, and all the money was going there. All the politicians were kind of not sending any money or infrastructure work to East Pakistan, and so a lot of Bengalis on East Pakistan got very, very tired of the government in West Pakistan. They felt they were being left out. They had their own language, and they wanted to be separate from West Pakistan. So what happened then was an operation called Operation Searchlight, where Pakistan sent a Pakistani army on 25th of March 1971 to curb the Bengali nationalist movement. And what happened then was a lot of real genocide that was going on. So basically, according to the New York Times, 10,000 people were killed. 5,000 to 7,000 people were killed in Dhaka. The Sydney Morning Herald says 10,000 to 100,000 people were killed. New York Times saying 35,000 people killed was in Dhaka during Operation Searchlight. So there was a lot of atrocities going on by the Pakistani army, real genocide, and that only enraged the Bengali people. And you got to understand, at the time, Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan, had no army, they had no air force, they had no navy, they didn't have any tanks. They were fighting with sticks and stones and swords, so they were pretty much getting butchered. So at this point, there was hundreds of millions of Bengali people, women and children going to India's borders, and there was a huge humanitarian crisis going on, and India decided to join the war. And India at the time was sided with Russia, and America was sided with West Pakistan. So America threatened to send an aircraft carrier near India's waters, near Bay of Bengal, and they did. They sent an aircraft carrier right next to the Bay of Bengal. They said they warned India not to intervene, but India joined the war anyway. And Russia was friends with India at the time, and Russia had sent nuclear submarines to the Bay of Bengal. And they said to the US, if US intervenes in this war, then Russia will also join in and they will help India. America at the time was fighting in the Vietnam War, so they didn't want another front fighting India as well. So even though they had sent an aircraft carrier to the Bay of Bengal, they wouldn't have joined in. China was on the side of West Pakistan. As you know, Pakistan and China's friendship goes back history. So China did not want to also get involved in the war, because they were involved in the Vietnam War as well. So China went through the UN diplomatic methods to kind of tell India not to get involved, fighting Bangladesh and stuff. And he was all near China's borders as well. So China did not want India to get involved. But India did, and they helped Bangladesh become independent. And I think it was a very short war, and Pakistan surrendered. So December 16th, 1971, the Pakistani soldiers surrendered to a joint India-Bangladeshi force. So it was a very short war. I think it lasted a few weeks, probably even less than that. And 93,000 Pakistani soldiers had surrendered. And on that day, Bangladesh independence was formed. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was the leader at the time who'd led Bangladesh to its independence, and he is a hero. He is like Chairman Mao of China. And also, 3 million Bengalis had died in the war, plus millions and millions died through famine and hunger as well. So you see, Bangladesh owes a big debt of gratitude to India, and that's why India and Bangladesh relations are very close. And in fact, Bangladeshis call India the big brother. So they are very close and they have history. So the fashion industry is Bangladesh's biggest export, and there are many designer stores who have factories in Bangladesh, and they obviously have cheap labour there, and they send their items across to Britain and other parts of the world. So in terms of China-Bangladesh relations, China was one of the last countries to recognise Bangladesh. I think it was they recognised them in 1975, a good 4 years after independence. So there has not been much Bangladeshi-Chinese relations until recently. So the older generation, especially the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, is known to be a puppet of India. And this article from a Bangladeshi paper says it all. So as a final note, India has no reason to rejoice about the US sanctions against Bangladeshi law enforcers, as the majority of Bangladeshis believe the country has morphed into a satellite of India since Hasina took office in 2009. For them, Indians are the bad guys of the country, not Chinese. Thus, while the US sanctions are integral to its China-bashing policy, the Hasina regime fails to toe the US line. So as you can see, it's a lot to do with politics. Even though the Bangladeshi government is very friendly to India, the younger generations do not like the Indians for many reasons. Number one, the religion. Number two, because Indians are getting closer to the Americans, which the Bangladeshis do not like. And the other reason is because Indians kind of been looking down on Bangladeshis, and they look down on them as second-class citizens. And again, Bangladeshis don't really like that. Plus, India's been promising Bangladesh a lot of help with infrastructure and stuff like that, and nothing's been really coming. So they've kind of been taking loyalty and taking Bangladeshis for a ride over the years, really. And that's how young Bangladeshis feel. They feel that because India helped Bangladesh, become independent, they've pretty much been using them as like second-class citizens, and the battles against Pakistan and stuff, and using them like a satellite state. So the Bangladeshis are very proud people. They want to obviously have their own say, they want to have their own country, they want to have their own sovereignty and things like that. So a lot of people are actually open to, being friends with China and opening up to BRI. So this is where all the trouble has happened, really. Bangladesh has opened up to China's BRI scheme, and this is the reason why Bangladesh has fallen out of favour with the US, because not just the BRI, but they also wanted Bangladesh to join the Quad. So they wanted the Quad to be part of Bangladesh, India, and Australia and Japan to contain China, but Bangladesh said no. And Bangladesh has obviously accepted a lot of BRI projects, which I'm going to go into a bit further on. And people in Bangladesh are actually quite appreciative of that, and that's also helped them, build up their GDP as well. They always welcome infrastructure, really, because that's what the country needs. But India's never been putting any money into Bangladesh's infrastructure. Then China comes along and they have, and Bangladesh are pretty happy about that. The fact that US is losing a lot of its allies recently, we're talking about Nicaragua, Honduras, Solomon Islands, one by one, US is losing them like dominoes. The time is gone where US can, pick on all of these poor or small countries, force them to do as the US please against their will. Now we're living in a multipolar society, multipolar world. Little countries such as Bangladesh, Barbados, Honduras, Nicaragua, they have a choice. They don't have to always listen to the Americans. You've got choice now. You can go with the Chinese, you can go with the Russian. America doesn't realize the world has changed. It cannot have its way anymore. So I want to bring you to this article. US reports Bangladesh saw a decrease in terrorist activity in 2020. The funny thing is, these elite paramilitary forces were made just to combat terrorism. They were also made to combat drug use and very serious crimes in Bangladesh. So these were working. And US report says Bangladesh saw a decrease in terrorist activity in 2020. You got to understand, Bangladesh is a very poor country, a lot of impoverished people there, a lot of Muslims, a lot of extremists. They have problems with terrorism. So for them to see a decrease in terrorist activity in 2020 is actually a good thing, and America should help them, not sanction them. And these are the same people that have been dealing with all of this terrorist activity, and these are the same people that have been helping the US in their fight in terror. And these are the same people now get sanctioned by the US, saying they're too heavy-handed or something. But Bangladesh is a poor country, and they need help, they need money, they need resources, and sometimes you got to be heavy-handed to deal with terrorism. You can't just be polite about it, or you can't just go up to a terrorist and say, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind not blowing yourself up and 10 other kids? Thank you very much, I really appreciate that." A country's got to do what a country's got to do to combat terrorism, and this is, internal politics in Bangladesh. You got to let them deal with these threats themselves. If you don't like the way Bangladesh is dealing with these terrorists, then help them, go in there, advise them, and speak and tell them how else they can do it differently. How else does America does it? Oh yeah, they use drones, they bomb them to smithereens, they bomb kids. They killed 100,000 Muslims in all of these Muslim countries. So please, America, explain how Bangladesh should deal with terrorism. Please explain that to Bangladesh. Absolutely ridiculous. As you can see, Bangladeshis are not very happy. The leaders of Bangladesh, they're elected. They're not dictators or anything like that. And the people of Bangladesh are actually proud of having a democracy. A lot of people in Bangladesh can vote, even though they're very poor and impoverished. A lot of them do vote. They do have a say. They do have protests and things like that. So it is an actual democracy. So people are just bemused why they're not being invited to the democracy summit. If there's any issues with Bangladesh's democracy, then shouldn't US actually bring it up and invite them to the summit anyway, and at least talk about their democracy and speak about what issues there are and whether any issues can be resolved, not just cut them off. This is absolutely ridiculous. They just cut them off. And it's even more ridiculous when you have countries like DR Congo, who are in the Democracy Summit, who's got huge human rights abuses, and The Economist and other news agents have said that DR Congo is probably the second worst human rights abuses on earth. So it's absolutely surprising that DR Congo is there and Bangladesh is not. It's actually really funny that US has placed sanctions just days before its 50th anniversary of its Liberation Day, when Bangladesh liberated itself from Pakistan with India's help, which I'm going to get into a bit further. But this is the allegation. These are the guys, Rapid Action Battalion. They were created in 2004 to combat extremism, terrorism, and drug use and things like that. So these guys have been doing their job, but as you can see from the US report, terrorism has been going down. So the RAB, Rapid Action Battalion, have been very successful in combating terrorism. And it just goes to show, when you're doing good at combating terrorism, you're helping the US in its fight for terror, you're basically given a pat on the back and a pat on the head from the US saying, well done, we appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Obviously your efforts are working, you're combating terrorism is going down, so good job. Then the next day, US wakes up in a different side of the bed and they fall out of favor of Bangladesh, and they're like, oh, okay, today we're not happy with you, you're causing human rights violations, these terrorists, you're being too heavy-handed on them. So it basically sounds very similar to what ETIM and China had. At the time when ETIM were causing terrorism activities all over China, and China had to go heavy-handed on these terrorists, and they had to fight terrorism, and US was on China's side. They were like, yeah, what you guys are doing, you guys are doing good, we support you all the way. As soon as China's out of favor, no, terrorism has been taken off our terrorist list. What you're doing to ETIM or what you're doing to the Uyghurs are against human rights, we don't support you. You see, when a country's in US's favor, you can do whatever you want. US is going to turn a blind eye. But when you're not in US's favor, they use human rights as a weapon. Like, we're not happy with the way you're dealing with these terrorists. It's against human rights, blah, blah, blah. It's a human rights violation. So what's been Bangladesh's response? They said that the government said that the sanctions have been made unilaterally and without any prior information. And the Home Minister said if any incident of human rights violation is reported, investigations are carried out through magistrates, legal action is taken if any government agency violates human rights. I must say I agree with this statement, and as you know, this is how rule-based order works with America. When you are in America's favour, they will turn a blind eye, they'll pat you in the back, they'll give you money, whatever you need, it's fine. But when you're against America's favour, they are going to push this human rights thing as a weapon. They will put sanctions against you. They don't need any proof. They don't need to work with you. They don't need to call the Bangladesh Home Office and ask what's going on. What are these allegations? We're concerned about these allegations. Can we discuss this? None of that. There is an international body called the UN which deals with human rights violations around the world. Has the UN said that there's human rights violations in Bangladesh? No, they haven't. So it's absolutely ridiculous how US can unilaterally place these sanctions on Bangladesh with no proof, no phone call, and just does whatever the hell they want. This reminds me of all of this forced labor and Uyghur stuff. When China was in America's favor, none of it came up. Taiwan didn't even come up. Hong Kong didn't come up. And as soon as China went out of favor with America, now it's like Uyghurs, forced labor, concentration camps, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, you name it, using human rights as a weapon, and this is a perfect example of it again. And another example is obviously China. So now it brings me back to the question, will US sanctions bring Dhaka closer to Beijing? I think so, because China itself is very, very important to Bangladesh and vice versa as well. And it says experts say Bangladesh's location is strategically significant, which Beijing has been long looking to exploit. And the reason it's very significant, it only shares the distance between China and Bangladesh is only 100 kilometers. So can you imagine ships going into Bangladesh, and there's already infrastructure being built around Tibet. And if there's infrastructure that goes from Bangladesh to Myanmar onto China, or Bangladesh via Bhutan into China, and don't forget Bhutan has recently opened diplomatic channels with China, so things are looking good. So I'm going to go a bit further onto this. So I want to show you this map where Bangladesh is. It's right in the middle between India and Myanmar. It's a very small country. And one thing you don't realize is the borders of Bangladesh is only about 100 miles between Lhasa and the borders of Bangladesh via Bhutan. So it's only like 100 miles. It's not even that much, guys. Probably not even 100 miles. I think it's 100 kilometers. So probably 60, 70 miles. And Bangladesh is very important because if you look at the map, a lot of the shipment goes through the Malacca Strait in Singapore. And this is a major problem because there is a white paper that America released that if there is ever a war over Taiwan, and if China wanted to reunify Taiwan at any point, America would block the Malacca Strait around here with his allies, India and Australia and maybe Britain. So they'll block any shipments going to and from China. So this is the reason China is building, one of the main reasons China is building the BRI. And this is why Bangladesh is so important, because if shipments go via Bangladesh, via Myanmar or via Bhutan, for example, you know, ships don't need to go through the Malacca Strait. There's another option as well. China is also trying to build a canal through Thailand. It's called the Kra Canal, which I'm going to show you in a bit. So this is the current BRI plan going from Myanmar via Bangladesh, and this is a better map of it. And you can see this is a string of pearls. So these are all ports that China is building, and you can see one of the major ports that China is trying to build in Bangladesh, in Chittagong. It's building an upgraded port facility in Bangladesh. However, you can see Gwadar here as well on the left, Pakistan, and you've got one in Sri Lanka. So this is why it's called the string of pearls. So it's going to go from Gwadar all the way Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and all of these. You got the Kra Canal, which is being built, and it's going to go all the way to Hainan Island. And one of the things a lot of people don't realize is this is the kind of BRI scheme that China is working with Bangladesh. So you got a road that's going to go to Myanmar, which is the AH1, and it's going to go straight through Bangladesh, and this road in red is going to go into India. So a lot of shipments and a lot of goods and stuff will go via Bangladesh into India and via Myanmar. So Bangladesh would improve. And also there is a road being built, the yellow one, which is being built from Chittagong, where China is helping Bangladesh build a port there, or upgrading the port there, and it's going to go to the north of the country. And the north of the country is where you got Bhutan, and so there's going to be roads going via Bhutan into Lhasa in China, and this west road is going to go via Myanmar into Kunming. And as you can see from this map here, you got Kunming in China, and Kunming's going to be a major city, a bit like Chongqing or Chengdu, a major hub in China. Kunming is going to be the main port of call going through Myanmar, going into India, going into Bangladesh, plus also going into the south as well, into Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore. So Kunming is going to be the major hub for all of these Asian countries. So remember when I said that India and Bangladesh are very close, and the current government are very close to Indians, And so this is the reason why India is trying to put a spanner in the works, and India has been using a lot of its influence to disrupt these BRI plans and plans by China. So you can see from somebody on the road here, which mentioned China cannot use this route fruitfully because of the Indian ploy to deny the Chittagong port facilities for goods to and from the Kunming area. On the AH1 route, it was supposed to cross the Bangladesh border to Burma, somewhere east of Cox's Bazar, but Burma vetoed it at the insistence of India, and this route will now enter the Indian northeast through Tamambil, and from there will go south to Burma, and then from Burma to China, Kunming, making it long detour, which is disadvantage to China. India is developing Sitwe port, so China will have little say in the operation of this port, and India has made Chittagong port further to India by making AH1 longer through Indian land. So you can see how India is trying to change the BRI schemes in Bangladesh, how they are trying to put their kind of influence into Bangladesh, disrupting these plans. However, all of this was before the sanctions was placed by the US, and things are going to be very, very different now. Bangladesh is not going to be trusting America any longer, and neither is it going to trust American friends like India. And I think Bangladesh has now chosen which direction to go to. I believe they will go with China, because America has pretty much burned their bridges with Bangladesh, and I think Bangladesh will veto anything that India does with the BRI, and these BRI schemes, and Bangladesh will become a very, very great port, and it'll be a better port than Gwadar in my opinion. I think over the next few years, the BRI will expand into Bangladesh more. There's going to be the Bangladesh port Chittagong, which is going to link China through Bhutan and Bangladesh and Myanmar. And I think these will develop over the next 5 to 10 years. Bangladesh has realized who its real friends are, and it's not going to be America. It's not going to be India. As long as India's sided with America, Bangladesh is not going to have any of that. And Bangladesh has realised, China's the next superpower, and that's the way to go. And if Bangladesh wants to develop and he wants his own sovereignty, China is the way forward. The other thing is, I think Bangladesh and China is a marriage made in heaven. They both have very similar histories. They both had very rough past. Famine. Being poverty, plus being a victim of imperialism, being victim of genocides, and the same way Japan genocided Chinese people, Pakistanis genocided the Bangladeshis as well. So there is a lot of shared history, and that's why in the 20-30 years Bangladesh is now becoming one of the richest countries in the area with the highest GDP growth, and that's only down to how Bangladeshi people are very resilient, they're very hardworking, and be like the Chinese, and that's that you can only become successful all down to hard work and with a very, very strong will and strong mind. To finish off by talking about Bangladesh and China's latest in the BRI as well. So you can see being next door neighbour of India, the so-called big brother of all South Asian countries, places Bangladesh in a difficult situation, maintaining a balanced bilateral ties with India and China. Bangladesh is taking extra care not to further irritate New Delhi while benefiting fully from the investment of China in the much needed infrastructure upgrade. So you can see Bangladesh is kind of doing a balancing act at the moment, and it's very, very difficult for a country like Bangladesh to kind of keep both India and China happy. So with this current sanctions by America, and I think Bangladesh has kind of made its choice, and you will see in the next 5-10 years how Bangladesh will slowly pivot toward China. But am I wrong? Do you think Bangladesh will still pivot and listen to India, and India will still have a major say what happens in Bangladesh in terms of its BRI? Or do you think Bangladesh will fully pivot to China? And I think by fully pivoting into China, it will only benefit Bangladesh, China and the region in general. But what do you guys think? Let me know in your comments, and I'll see you in the next video.